and we welcome you to On the Hash with Hatfield, our weekly football preview show as far as getting you set for the games coming up this weekend. It's been mighty hot outside out there in Virginia Beach and all across Hampton Roads, and you see the Sportsplex in the background. That'll be the site of a big matchup coming up on Friday night as Atlantic Shores has its home opener taking on the Ambassadors of Norfolk Christian. Seahawks off to a nice 2-0 start. Are they already this season? And we'll be chatting with the head football coach of the Seahawks of Atlantic Shores, Wayne Lance, coming up in the next segment of our program. But a lot to go over with you here on the Hash with Hatfield. As always, you can reach out to us on Twitter. Well, X is what it's called now, at 757 Sports Talk. Log on to vbsportsplex.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Virginia Beach Sportsplex. Like, share, subscribe. Drop us an email, too, at hatfieldsports@gmail.com if you want to inquire about getting involved as one of our sponsors and supporters of this show, the Field Hockey Show we're doing weekly, as well as the 757 Saturday Sports Talk program with Hatfield and Young at the Plex. But all kinds of neat things for you to get involved with us, as we are going to be talking all kinds of sports on a regular basis here from the Plex, and a lot of neat games to check out this week. The big monster matchup for the state of Virginia as far as bragging rights, 757, 804, and ramifications for our state rankings, if you will, on virginiapreps.com, which will be rolling across our scroll here in just a moment. We'll also have a list of the games that are coming up this week. You have a big showdown in Norfolk with the Maury Commodores, who lost last year's state championship to the Highland Springs Springers 33-19. In fact, Highland Springs has had Maury's number and 757 team's number for many, many years. In fact, under Lauren Johnson, the former Springers coach, who we had on our season preview show with Coach Young and me a couple weeks back, they have gone 11-0 against teams from Tidewater. We're talking beating Maury a few different times, beating Oscar Smith in the regular season, Nansman River in the postseason, Indian River, Woodside, Norview. Woodside was a regular season win, but they are dominant. Yet again, coming off 2 6-point wins against really stiff competition, beating Miramar of Florida 20-14, and then a 41-35 barn burner. George Lovelace with a touchdown catch that won it for them against the Manchester Lancers, now a Region 6A rival of theirs. Highland Springs is loaded with talent year after year after year. Quarterback is committed to Maryland and Christian Martin. But beyond Christian Martin, this team is stacked because they have skill position players galore, which is normally the case for them. But in addition to the skill position players, really good players on defense, their linebacker, Brennan Johnson, a.k.a. Peanut, he is the reigning state defensive player of the year. Martin, the state offensive player of the year in Class 5. They're now in Class 6. But Highland Springs did have 8 all-state defenders, 6 on the first team. And I think the only one that is back on the first team selections on defense is Johnson. Meanwhile, as far as Maury's defense goes, they had a 34-14 win in a slobber knocker early with Wise out of Maryland. They went up to Maryland and beat them. It was tied 14 at the half. But really in the second half, their defense was just rock solid. 4 tackles for loss from Ari Watford, the former standout pass rusher from Salem High in Virginia Beach, and he's being recruited by just about every school in the country. Fred Johnson, a South Carolina commit, had a great game on defense with 8 tackles and multiple stops for loss. Ike Simmons, he's one of the best sophomores in the country. He had several tackles in that game. And then their quarterback, Autori Newkirk, threw for over 300 yards, 100-plus yards receiving for LeBron Bond. Leon Clark, new running back that came in from Churchland, he had more than 100 yards on the ground. So they're very balanced and diverse, are Daree McCain's Commodores. They've gotten better in these matchups year after year after year as far as playing Highland Springs. They got their head beat in about 4 or 5 years ago, 71-28, when they were new on the scene of the state playoffs. The next year, Maury won its state championship with that group led by C.J. Beasley, who's at Coastal Carolina, and Keandre Lambert-Smith, who's at Penn State, and Ty Granger, Deshaun Peel, Darian Varner, and that crew, winning it in 2019 over Stonebridge over at Hampton University. But they played Highland Springs again in 2021, lost 13-0 in the state semifinals. So they've gone from losing by a running clock margin to a couple of scores. Last year's was a 2-score touchdown loss without Peyton Jones, their running back, who's the backup at Duke, to the main starter. And Peyton Jones, by the way, loving life down there at Duke and Durham, who just beat Clemson in a big college football ACC upset on Labor Day night. You feel like Maury's close now. They're getting to that point where they can beat a Highland Springs. I think this is a really close game. I'm going to give the slightest of edges to Maury, but it will never surprise me if Highland Springs wins because they've been battle tested. They have the athletes, the coaching, the pedigree, and this should be one whale of a ball game. A couple other games to keep an eye peeled on, and we'll also touch on some more in our final segment after we chat with Wayne Lance. Western Branch at Kings Fork is interesting to me for a couple of different reasons. Kings Fork has been able to beat Western Branch the last 2 years, lower scoring defensive type of games. And I think this could be the case again here because the Bulldogs had their bye week after beating Churchland in their first game, did not score in the second half, which I think left a sour taste in the mouth of Coach Anthony Joffrion, former lineman standout for Ocean Lakes, and then Shawan. And he's got a really good running back in Javon Ford, who's going to be a Southeastern District Player of the Year candidate, at least in my eyes. The defense is fast and physical and aggressive. A lot of playmakers, including Kayvon Blanding on the back end. Brother Quinn Blanding was a superstar at Bayside High. They went on to UVA to set some records in terms of tackles. Wouldn't be surprised if he and a couple of his defensive backmates got some picks here because Western Branch might be forced to throw if the running game does not work with Kyneek Baines and Greg Taylor. They're going to need to get better production in terms of the passing game and blocking. They had trouble against Benedictine after scoring that first touchdown to take the lead, then lost to the Cadets 31-13, giving up 31 unanswered. Got a touchdown late from Damon McDaniel Jr., whose dad was a heck of a player at Lansdowne as a teammate of Percy Harvins, and Damon Sr. went down to Florida State, also played at Hampton University. That McDaniel name, well-known, Marquay McDaniel, kin to him as well. So that game's going to be a good one to watch out for in Suffolk with Western Branch and Kings Fork. Winner has to feel a lot better. Western Branch does not want to drop to 1-2, but Kings Fork trying to keep that goose egg in the loss column as they are now a Class 5 team after playing previously in Class 4. They're in the same region with Maury and with Warwick, who's a Peninsula heavyweight, and with Nansemond River. That Region 5B should be very competitive. A lot of your beach teams in Region 5A, where Green Run is the top dog for sure, but you have some other teams lurking in the background like your Bayside, like your Cox, like your Salem, even Indian River out of Chesapeake in the Southeastern District too. And one more game to hit on before we go to break here on this edition of On the Hash with Hatfield. Beach District matchup, Bayside at Cox. Once upon a time, the Marlins head coach John White was an assistant coach with the Cox Falcons. I think that was back when Steve Alasso was the head coach. And John ended up going to his alma mater in Bayside, coming up to Darnell Moore to be the head coach around 2012, 2013, somewhere in there, and had some great players like, obviously, Quinn Blanding, who we just referenced, and was an assistant on that region championship team that featured Blanding and Anthony Cooper, Taquan Smoke Mizell, Dion Stitt, Demetrius Nicholson, a lot of UVA flavor guys, if you will. But as you look at the matchup with Cox, it has not been very favorable. It has not been very kind, if you will, to the Bayside Marlins. In fact, Cox has won 12 of the past 13 meetings with Bayside, 7 consecutive victories in the series, 3 of them by 8 points or less. And though Bayside has scored 35 points per game in their first 2 wins, beating Salem in a tight one, and then also beating the likes of Tallwood to get to 2-0, you do wonder if Cox has kind of had a mental psyche edge here, their number of late. That's one that's going to tell us a lot. Cox won its first game convincingly over Princess Anne, then lost its second one by a wide margin to Green Run, who certainly just out-athleted them, outspeed them, just hit them with playmakers, and Kassan Farrar was just sizzling at quarterback and did so without Tayshawn Young. Steve does have a lot of receivers, though, with Keelan Brody-Adams, Virginia Tech commit Jaden Anderson, Quali Price. They're just stacked with wide receivers over there at Green Run on Dahlia Drive. So Stallions have Kellum coming up this week, but Bayside Cox, chance for the Marlins to get to 3-0 or Cox to get above 500 at 2-1. Game could be one in the trenches where Gerard Johnson, the Virginia Tech commit, is going to be hard for Bayside. A little bit of a new revamped offensive line for them to block because Johnson commands a double team and is a big-time factor. So those are the 3 to watch there. Highland Springs, Maury, Western Branch at Kings Fork, Bayside at Cox. Some other games involving some Eastern District teams, also Southeastern. We'll hit on a couple of those games as well in our final segment. But it's also going to be a big matchup on Friday night at the Plex. You want to be there for Atlantic Shores, which has sights on being a VISAA state championship team. And Wayne Lance's Seahawks with his son Micah, the trigger man, putting up some mega numbers so far this season. So we're going to take a time out and hear from Coach Wayne Lance as he will get you set up with what's on deck for the Seahawks of Atlantic Shores and talk about his coaching background and everything going on with them this year. That's coming your way next year, as it is Hatfield at the Plex on the Hash with Hatfield, the football edition style. We have so many great sponsors and supporters that make this possible, including when it's so hot outside. Where's a better place to get you some dessert than you know where you're going? You want to get that ice cream. I want to get that ice cream. They have all kinds of great things for you. Not just ice cream. They even have chicken strips, too. We're talking about our friends at Dairy Queen.
Wait, hold up. DQ put fries and onion rings in a chicken strip basket? Did you know this? Oh, of course you did. It's sitting right in front of you. Sorry. I mean, you got fries and onion rings together. Is this for real?
Hey, baby, wait.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. That just got really real. Grab a chicken strip and fry rings basket.
Okay, just one. Just one.
DQ, happy tastes good. Get it delivered at DQ.com.
For more than 23 years, we've made it our mission to lend peace of mind.
Even when times aren't very peaceful.
We know that every borrower is unique.
That's why we put you first in every step of the loan process.
At Atlantic Bay, we are dedicated, now more than ever,
to providing digital tools, resources, and a lending hand.
To help you reach your home dreams.
Because we're here for you.
whenever,
wherever,
however.
After more than 50 years of innovation, AstroTurf still leads the way. The inventor of artificial turf does it all, right here in the USA. We engineer, test, manufacture, and install the world's most innovative fibers and turf technologies, with over 30,000 tracks and fields worldwide. AstroTurf, powered by Sport Group.
Back here with On the Hash with Hatfield, our football podcast from the Plex, and we're so pleased to be joined by a special guest. He is the head football coach of the Atlantic Shores Seahawks. He's led them to glory, state championship glory, in fact, and a lot of years at the helm there, and we'll go through his background and tell you about this team for this coming season. It's already underway, 2-0 start for his Seahawks as they have their home opener at the Plex coming up on Friday night against the Ambassadors of Norfolk Christian. We say hello to our good pal, Coach Wayne Lance. Coach, good to see you. How's life treating you here in this summer? I'm wearing the Miami Heat jersey just because I want to represent how hot it is outside, and I know you all have felt it these last few days.
Yeah, it's cooking, but that's this time of year. Kind of prep for it and plan for it through the summer. And man, considering the spring we had and how I wouldn't even call that a spring. It was just kind of like winter up until the summer, and it's taken a little bit to get used to.
For sure. Now, let's talk about your team a little bit and what also, brought you to Atlantic Shores, because this is year what for you at the helm of the Seahawks?
17.
17. And for those that don't know, you've got a background that extends all the way back to Lynchburg, and fill the audience in on that as we'll dive into the players to watch out for in this matchup coming up if you can.
Started my coaching career at EC Glass High School under Bo Henson. I was a volunteer ninth grade coach. And the irony is when I was a student at Liberty, the logical thing was to go to LCA and say, hey, I'm a student at Liberty. And I didn't understand that at the time, like how many people must go do that. And so they were like, no, we're good. And so I was kind of hurt by that. I didn't really know what to do. And I had a friend who's student teaching at EC Glass, and he's like, just go talk to Coach Henson. I'm sure he'd take you. I'm like, and they had just lost to Ronald Curry in the state championship the year before. And I'm like, I can't imagine some kid from Liberty just walking in there. And so I walked in, and I didn't know who I was talking to. If you ever met Coach Henson, he kind of has this presence that he's just a good guy. And he's like, I said, I'm looking for Coach Henson. He's like, who are you? And I introduced myself. He goes, I'm Coach Henson. And I was like, oh, great. I blew it. I was stammering, stuttering, and he's like, all right, I'll think about getting you a spot. He goes, I may have my freshman coach call you. So I was a volunteer freshman line coach. Never played the offensive line, No, but like I see all these little things as I came up, like things I would not have normally coached that I was allowed to coach or told to coach, and how that's kind of like shaped my view of football. And so like some of those base principles are still with me till this day. So I started there, was a freshman coach, then I was a head freshman coach the next year. Then I moved my way up to varsity and finished as a defensive coordinator at 27 years old. And then there was a change in coaches. I was one of the guys up for the position, but I knew at 27 that was a long shot at the time. And so that summer, the job at what was then Lynchburg Christian Academy came open. They had won 7 games in 3 years. And so it was July. I got the job 2 weeks before practice started and just started building a program. So was able to be there for 3 years as the head coach. And then I moved to Indiana. My wife's initially from Argus, Indiana, which they have one stoplight still to this day. But they're probably the last small school team in 1978 to make the Final Four. So if you know your Indiana basketball history.
Nice.
The 78 Final Four team is still celebrated in town. There is a restaurant you can go to that's got like the girls' state championship team, and the Argus Dragons are still hitting the ones that are still with us, I think, are still on the parade tour every year. So, but I went to Kokomo High School in Kokomo, Indiana. Coached there, was the head coach for 3 years. It was a 5A school, and then made my way when the Shores job came open. They had 4 coaches in 2 years. I was the 4th coach in 2 years. They had a coach. They hired a coach. He was here for a week. Decided this ain't for me. The AD took over as the head coach, and by the end of the year, he had already posted it. I thought, man, I could hardly ever beat those guys when I was at LCA. It's got to be a factory down there. Then I got here and thought, where'd everybody go? It was pretty rough, but I've been here ever since.
Yeah, and you've done a wonderful job there, and it's a pretty special place, as you know, at Atlantic Shores, to be there as long as you have. Did you envision you to be there, going on, I guess you could say, 2 decades worth? It's been multiple decades in your sense, but did you ever envision that, A, and then B, what's kept you there to be in such a unique place? Because I'm sure you've had other opportunities to go to, be it a private school in the state or outside the state, public school, but you've stayed there with the Seahawks. What's kept you there?
I think family, opportunities. I think when I first got here, I was still young at the time, I guess. That's probably the best way to put that. But I was just trying to build something, because I had seen it done at LCA and then went through the struggles of being a 5A program in Indiana and just seeing how that worked. And I thought, I want to make this something. And then having my own kids come through school and being able to be a part of their lives, I think that was probably one of the things that at least kept me at this level. And I really enjoyed the people here. Like, it's the environment, the people, but probably family most of all. I had been fortunate enough when I was the head coach at LCA that 5 of the Liberty staff members who were coaching at that time had different coaches or kids on my staff, or kids on my team. So one of the things that I was able to do was see how that impacted their lives. Like Coach Rocco, who's now the head coach there, he was the OC at Liberty. His son Chris was my quarterback, and so I watched, when Frank would have to go and recruit Western Pennsylvania, and we had a game, and how he was able to keep up with that. And I constantly had that in my head, that if there was an opportunity for me to move up, what I would be missing. And there were times I had applied for GA positions and done interviews, and opportunities I had to maybe move up to the college level. And every time my family was going to win out on that, because I'd watched other families do it. Obviously, a ton of colleges do that. But at the same time, for me, and what was best for my family was to be in an environment that I felt was encouraging and conducive, and to work for Mike Hudgens and Ed Bruno and Gary Carlson and Dave Garrett and those guys. Like, they're always encouraging of us and what we do and how we try to grow kids. And so this has been a special place to me, and just to be a part of that.
For sure. And one of the names that we've highlighted, it's going across our ticker of key stat leaders for the Seahawks, is the quarterback, Micah Lance, who, if I'm not mistaken, statistically so far, a couple of games in the books, 11 touchdowns, 1 intercept, 512 yards. And I imagine Pops is also proud of the completion percentage while also taking care of the football. He's got a bright future, does he not?
Yeah, he does. He does. He's been my sidekick probably the longest, of all the kids. 2 of my kids are out of high school now. One is playing volleyball at Chowan. Jaden is now in Lynchburg and over at Liberty. And I've got a senior daughter who's a volleyball player as well and a track runner. They're all different. They've all had different parts in this whole thing. But at the same time, Mike has kind of been the guy. Every now and then this time of year, I'll get those Facebook memories of him like picking up stuff at the field, or he was like 4 and he would set up practice. All I had to do was give him a list and say, these are the drills today. And we'd walk out. Not only was the bags out, but like they'd be set up. He was driving a golf cart at 5. So like in a way, he's kind of known where everything is and how things go. So it was a great help to me, but he's kind of just been with me through the whole thing. The other kids were like, no, we want to go home. Mike is like, can I go with Dad? And so, it's been kind of, it's been fun, but we try to keep that relationship like more business-like. And I've learned actually after having 2 kids, like try to leave it here, not come home. And we'll have those few conversations on the car on the way home. Like, I really like this route better than this route against this coverage. I'm like, yeah. And so we'll work those things out, but it's been fun. He's done a good job, especially as a younger guy coming into a program after Damian. And I think his relationship with Damian, who's graduated at Wagner, even when Damian comes back, he'll call Micah, hey, I want to throw, you ready to go? And they'll work on some things. So it's not so much been my relationship with Micah, but the other guys the big brothers he's had over the years, from Ryan Chamberlain to Chase Larman to Damian Maisel and go on from there. So, yeah, he's done pretty well. And he's got a good group of guys. Like most of the guys he's throwing to, he's come up with. Chris Higgins, they were playing 7-on-7 during the COVID year at the Sportsplex. Josh Sibley and him have been in class together since first grade. And Corey Williams, Corey's dad, Sean, was once my assistant coach. The boys would come over and play while we had coaches meetings. So there's a connection with each of those guys, and they've been throwing balls with each other forever. So it's a lot of fun.
And you mentioned players at the next level, Damian Maisel, obviously at Wagner. We saw Caden Beatty, what a force he was for the last couple of years in the trenches, now in the MAC at Kent State. And you've got among some of the players getting recruited for the next level, one that's committed, I do believe, to William & Mary. I see 13 tackles, 5 for loss, and Nathaniel McDonald. Tell us more about him and some of these other contributors, what they've done for you so far in his 2-0 start. I know McDonald is a game changer from what we saw a season ago.
Yeah, Nate has been a guy, man. He's been here forever. He was that middle schooler with size 15 shoes, and I was like, if he grows into these things, it's going to be amazing. But he's just been a steady force over the years and continued to learn and grow as he's grown into his body. He's a great edge guy. I would love to play him at tight end if you could see the man move and catch. But he's been a force for us on the offensive line as well. So he kind of steadies the ship. He makes sure everybody's in the right place. Great leadership skills and talent. Defensively, obviously coming off the edge, and we've done some things where we've played him at outside linebacker as well. So we can move him around in different places. And that's kind of a key for us, making sure our guys can play multiple positions, because sometimes you're a defensive end in high school and you're an off-ball linebacker in college, or you're a tight end or a fullback. And so he's been outstanding. And I think everybody knows that. So developing the guys around him. Patrick Linton is another guy playing the offensive line who we've moved around a little bit on defense. Pat is tenacious. He plays with great leverage, great hands, just has a hunger for the game. Cody Batts, obviously, is probably our top linebacker returning. Cody's a 6-foot, 220-pound linebacker. We use him in spots on offense as well. So those 3 primarily have kind of anchored the interior, the from the edge on in. Isaac Cohen's been a 3 or 4 year guy for us on the offensive line, and now he's getting his chance to kind of take over in Caden's place on defense. He's done a fantastic job. Jack Weaver played a lot of linebacker for us a year ago. He's also our starting running back, so he's in the box as a linebacker. So we've done a couple things. We've had kind of 4 or 5 other guys getting in that rotation, especially when it's been hot. It's been incumbent upon us as coaches to make sure we can get a bunch of guys in the game and give them experience, especially early before we get into the meat of the schedule with Norfolk Christian, North Cross, Catholic, and SA. And then it just becomes murderer's row after a certain point in time here.
Having the opportunity and the privilege to call a number of your games, you all play a fun brand of football, pretty up-tempo, wide open. So if you like passing and moving the ball around, spreading it out, it's neat for the fans to check out. So what can the audience expect from your team against Norfolk Christian as you dissect the film of them and their strengths and how this matchup sort of looks on paper or on film, which, doesn't always, materialize in a game, but what's kind of your assessment of it from afar and also in depth as a coach?
I think the biggest thing with Norfolk Christian, they've really improved up front. They are huge up front, and their running back, he's been amazing to this point. Tristan has done a great job carrying the ball. He's kind of a battering ram in there. They're going to hit gaps inside, and he may bounce it outside or cut it back. And he's been tremendous for them in their huge part of what they're doing. So I think to that point, with their size, they have a left-handed quarterback who's been very consistent. He's been able to spread the ball around through a couple receivers. Defensively, they are attacking. They use their size up front to be able to control the line of scrimmage, and then use their athleticism in the back end to keep everything in the right place. I think Coach Rice has done a great job on the defensive side over there. So it will be good. We match athletes very well. They probably have a size advantage, so I'm sure they'll be looking to take advantage of that. And that's really not anything new for us. We kind of deal with a lot of teams with a lot of size over the course of the year. So I think the key is obviously their running game for them offensively and their size up front and their athletes in the secondary. So it should be a good matchup for us. They've come out both weeks. They won at Manio, and I know Manio is a long time 1A state power down in North Carolina, and then Fredericksburg Christian last week. That was a 17-6 game in the fourth quarter. I think it was 10-0 at the half. And, obviously, a year ago, that was not the case. It was a runaway, and Fredericksburg Christian very talented. So obviously the gap has closed, and they're doing what they do very well.
I'll get you on this one and appreciate the time coming on as our first football coaching guest on the Hash with Hatfield here from the Plex. As you look at the team here 2 games in, what area would you pinpoint you need to show some improvement? You've been very dominant thus far, off to a nice start. As you look at, beyond, because certainly you're going to have that run to the playoffs where people expect another championship push from your team. And then to follow that up, if you can, for the audience that's not familiar, how it works for the VISAA in your division for the postseason, because some get to that November point and they say, how does this work? It's a little different than what happens with the VHSL and public school for football.
It is, and that's something we've continued to work on. I think as far as the improvement standpoint, just executing better and working on tempo and tackling. And, I think a lot of people can get caught in the mirage and smoke and mirrors, I guess is the best way to put it, of offensive and defensive football. But I think I learned long ago, I don't know if it was watching all the NFL films I watched it growing up as a kid, but it was probably Vince Lombardi, the guy right there. It was one of those things, football comes down to blocking, tackling, running, catching. It's like the most fundamental of things, and then how you put that together. So I think for us, it's a continuation of blocking, tackling, getting off blocks, running, catching the ball, being efficient, not turning the ball over, creating turnovers. It's so basic in some senses. Obviously, each team presents a different matchup. How we approach Norfolk Christian, I tell a lot of people our game plans are like snowflakes. Each one is unique because each team presents a different aspect. So when I look at Norfolk Christian compared to North Cross, compared to Nansman Suffolk, compared to Catholic, like there are some similarities and then there are a huge amount of differences. So for us, it's just a matter of pulling out those aspects and figuring which one's going to work best. As far as a playoff push or how the playoffs work, we've kind of morphed it over the years. We used to have a point system, and it was one of those things where teams started taking advantage of the point system. You could schedule around certain teams and end up in a place where, you were in and maybe another team that might be deserving is out. So we started using a committee, much like all the other Vista sports, where we use those metrics provided for us. We have used a coach's poll. Sometimes emotions get into those things. So we've done a pretty decent job of figuring out the Final Four. And now most of us will play each other. So for the last couple of years, we've had a few times where maybe someone didn't play each other, and now you're taking the points and using those and making your best guess as to who would be the better team if they were to make it in as a 4 seed per se. So the top 4 teams in each division make it. There are 12 teams in each. There's actually more in Division One, and then we're just playing for the Final Four. We've looked at maybe moving it to the Final Six, but then you're adding a week. Boarding schools come into play with that when it comes to Thanksgiving and breaks, and then the basketball coaches are clamoring for their athletes, especially at the smaller schools, which is totally understandable. If you've got 98 boys in your school and you're fielding a football team and a basketball team and all these other things, there's probably some overlap in dual sport athletes. So that's one of the things I think I've said over the years, like you would be amazed at the quality of coaches at the private school level that probably will never get the respect or the accolades or whatever it is. Like I look at guys like Mike Beal and Steven Alexander, who's now moved on to Georgia, and even Shannon Taylor. And I can go down a list to Coach Harlow and like it's unique. We have 26 boys on our team, and you're going to play a season like that and try to do what you've always done and be successful. And so you've got to be able to work around those parameters and homework and student athletes, and I have a job. And so it makes it unique towards the end of the season, especially as that winds down. You get in playoff mode and you're like, okay, we got a home game or we not? How's this going to seed itself out? Most of the times the head-to-head comes into play, and we go from there.
Well, good deal. Well, hey, we thank you so much for coming on the podcast On the Hash with Hatfield. We wish you and the Seahawks all the best as you have game number 3 coming up, the home opener at the Sportsplex in Virginia Beach. Going out there and support Atlantic Shores in the area football scene as they take on Norfolk Christian Friday, September the 8th, a 7 p.m. kickoff. And I look forward to seeing you, my friend, out there pretty soon, getting the chance to call one of those games at the Plex. And I love the background, by the way. You got Lombardi on there. Is that Jack Lambert as well?
Jack Lambert. That's my guy, my favorite player of all time. I got Jack Lambert. I got my Rashad Jennings jersey. I was fortunate enough to coach him. Some of my former players. I got an LCA picture from when I coached there against Atlantic Shores here at the school when we used to play here. And one of my former coaches was the water boy in that picture. So it's kind of really odd how that picture ended up on my wall. And we were sitting here one day, he goes, "That's me." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" It is. And so we had a pretty good laugh about it. But hey, congrats to you. I know there was a lot of change, but I feel like I see your face all over YouTube now. I don't know what show I'm tuning into, and now we got field hockey going on. That's
field hockey. We've got football. We got Coach Young and me back on Saturday mornings. We'll get you on that. We decided to keep him away. We don't want him to jinx you just yet. We want to wait till that's down the road. And by the way, I'm not a Steelers fan, as you know, an Arizona Cardinals fan. So you broke my heart in Super Bowl 43 after Larry Fitzgerald caught it from Kurt Warner, and then Aaron Francisco decided to let Ben Roethlisberger and Santonio Holmes be heroes at the end. But I will say this. 2 things. One, my Virginia Preps Richmond reporter, Danny Lewis, has boldly predicted Pittsburgh over San Francisco in the Super Bowl, and his picks are usually pretty on point, which is crazy. And 2, in the fantasy football league, I'm in with some guys, some fellows from Hometown Sports Productions in the Sportsplex, and Coach Young actually made this pick for me because we're in a keeper league. And the other picks were you had to go draft, and I was at Norfolk State basketball team camp that day, so he decided to be my cohort. We'll share the winnings, which is probably not going to happen. He took Kenny Pickett for me, so I got to root for Pickett to have a big year for you guys this year.
We'll do it. It's looking better. I went to training camp last year with my sons and a former player, and we had a blast watching, but such a different atmosphere this year compared to last when it was kind of like the new start, the post-Ben era. So, yeah, I'm an addict. I love my Steelers, Pirates, and Penguins, and so, I can't get enough. I hope Pickett can pull it through, and it looks great so far. So I know the preseason means absolutely nothing, but we'll see what happens this Sunday.
That's right. A big one on Friday night, the Seahawks and the Ambassadors, Atlantic Shores, Norfolk Christian at the Plex, and Sunday, Wayne's Steelers take on the 49ers. Thank you so much, my friend. We'll do this again sometime, and have a good one.
All right, you too. Thank you.
That is Coach Wayne Lance of Atlantic Shores with us on the Hash with the Hatfield. We'll come back.
At CHKD, sports medicine is more than just treating injuries. It's a whole team approach to caring for young athletes. With experienced physicians, surgeons, trainers, and rehab specialists here when kids and teens need them most. Our experts help young athletes prevent injuries too, with advanced training and conditioning programs that keep them in the game safely. CHKD Sports Medicine, where kids are more than patients and we're more than a hospital.
Wait, hold up. DQ put fries and onion rings in a chicken strip basket? I mean, you got fries and onion rings together. Is this for real? Oh, yeah, it just got really real. DQ, happy tastes good.
And we're back to On the Hash with Hatfield at the Plex as we talk to you about the high school football scene. We thank so much for Wayne Lance coming on the program to give you an in-depth look at the Seahawks and Atlantic Shores. Another fine season looks to be in store for them this year as they get ready for Norfolk Christian to play host to them. We went through some of the earlier games with Bayside, Cox, as well as Highland Springs, Maury, Western Branch at Kings Fork. A couple other games I want to touch on in just a bit. But before we do all that, we want to tell you that we'll be having a Player of the Week coming on a regular basis here on the Hash with Hatfield. Give you a chance to nominate some players via our social media platforms through X on, I guess you say it's still Twitter, but on there, as well as Instagram, Facebook. So we want to give you a chance to do all of that and send in those stats to us via email, through X and or Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, so we can highlight the players that are deserving on a regular basis here on our podcast and online through all the different ways that we want to give you that coverage of the high school sports scene, especially with football, field hockey, and everything we have going on with the great folks at Hometown Sports Productions at the Plex. There was some Labor Day football on Monday night. It was Monday Night Football, not the Jets and Bills that'll be coming up next week, but it was Norview and Great Bridge squaring off at Hickory High School in Chesapeake, resuming a suspended game. And we caught up with the head coach of the now 2-0 Pilots, Herbert Lawrence. Let's hear what Coach Lawrence had to tell us after that win right now here on the Hash with Hatfield. I am here with Norview head football coach Herbert Lawrence. His Pilots win a Labor Day classic, if you will, 35-19 over the Great Bridge Wildcats at Hickory High School in Chesapeake. Well, Coach, you play on a Friday night. The lights go out at Great Bridge. They have the kids get ready for a holiday weekend, and you have to play the resumption of this game from the second quarter on. How'd you deal with all the hoopla and the zaniness that goes into preparing for a game that was suspended, if you will?
Well, I would just tell you, it's just so humblingness of the kids that want to stay sincere to the policy that we have here, and just a testament to those young men. Yes.
You have a sophomore who's going to be a pretty good player, number 1, Charles Jackson, a running back for you. Had a long touchdown run before halftime. Also had a pick 6. I know his dad was a heck of a player back in the day in the Eastern District at Maury. Speak on what this young man brings your team in all 3 phases, if you will.
That young man is a blessing. I mean, he's truly one young man that I would always say Google don't even have the words for what he does, but he's an extraordinary young man, and definitely we're so blessed to have him.
How much is he the focal point? I know you do a lot of neat things with your running game and some counters, misdirection type of stuff, and just to try to really chew the clock and get first downs that way, but how much is he a focal point in terms of what you want to do offensively to kind of set the tone?
Well, not so well. He's a focal point, but I would say pretty much more like 51%, because we still have 49% of the other young men that does just as much to help us out as well.
Sure, I know it all starts with the offensive line too, for you to block and give him those holes to run, and the other backs as well. A few more for you. How much did the confidence grow from the game with Smithfield? I know that was one that was kind of looking like it was going to go the other direction. You got a big pass on a 4th down, set up for a field goal that you hit. How much did that give the kids a little extra oomph? Because it's a big difference being 1-0 as opposed to 0-1, and now you're 2-0 here.
Yes, well, definitely that did give us a huge oomph, because Smithfield played us very tough, and outstanding team, outstanding coaches. But we were just able to just stay with our policy that we hear. We bend, but we won't break, and that's what we did that night. We bent, but we was able to not break, and we was able to sustain the victory out of that.
Yeah, and your defense in this particular game with Great Bridge, a lot of red zone stops, 4th down execution plays. How much is that going to be something that you all, as harp on, point of emphasis, you move forward into the teeth of your schedule in the Eastern District?
Well, when you were speaking on other parts of the team other than Charles, that's where part of that 49% comes from, is that defense, because they do great things for us.
Lastly, you're 2 games in, you're 2-0, better than 0-2 or 1-1. What are you most pleased about? Maybe a unit or unsung hero that you would highlight, and then on the other side of that coin, I should say, what do you have to improve on and clean up in order to be a team come playoff time that can make some noise in your eyes?
The one thing that we know, we only have 5 seniors. So we only have 4 that actually start. So we're very young. So that's the one thing that we are doing with the young men now, as far as the growth that we're trying to develop with them. So I would definitely just say just growing to help us out.
Sure.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. All the best, and we'll see the Pilots soon.
And I thank you so much.
So that was Herbert Lawrence, head coach of the Norview Pilots, who are now 2-0 on the campaign. They got a pivotal one coming up on Friday night, playing host to Norcom, who's coming off a tough loss to Flowers, out-of-state opponent. But Norcom looked pretty good in its opener against Grafton to follow up an exhibition versus Western Branch, and we'll see if Tyrell Grant and the Greyhounds can rebound and get to 2-1 as they have to try to stop that running game there with Johnson for Norview and see if the Norcom defense is up to the task. That's one to keep an eye on in the Eastern District for sure. Another one is Lake Taylor at Hopewell, and really this one's a game that the last 2 years they've met in the postseason. Lake Taylor prevailed last year in the playoffs, 2021. Hopewell, I believe, doubled them up, hit for a 50-burger. Ricky Irby's team was mighty strong and impressive in their opener versus Mecklenburg County. Lake Taylor had the 6 takeaways in that win over Camden and New Jersey a couple of Saturdays ago in the heat. So if they can generate takeaways, win the turnover margin, not have fumbleitis, Hank Sawyer has to feel good about getting a 2-0 before a key matchup at St. Christopher's, who just beat Lafayette up in Richmond. Meanwhile, the big plays are going to be there for Hopewell. So they feel like if they can get Lake Taylor blocked, which is always a big question mark when teams play them with that heavy pressure and the blitz packages that Hank Sawyer and his defense will throw at you, they have to like their chances. The Titans led by Elijah Moss, Washington, a Syracuse commit, also Jameer Sporty Freeman at quarterback. And they have some hosses, as they say, up front with Keontae Arrington and company on that line that can really get the job done and give people some problems. So that's one that will certainly be a game to circle if you're in the 804 with a 7-5-7 team going up there. And another team to keep an eye on is Nansemond River. Alonzo Ricks' team idle last week. They beat Bethel to begin the season. Chance to get to 2-0 as they take on Deep Creek, who fell to Currituck of North Carolina last weekend. If Nansemond River wins this game with a dual threat quarterback leading the way and now Kendrick Overton, they've got Emmanuel Izagu, the James Madison commit, bringing the pressure off the edge at outside linebacker, defensive end. Warriors will be 2-0, and then it gets tough. The litmus test begins with Oscar Smith, who's going to try to rebound against Great Bridge this week after their loss to Phoebus 16-2. Then it's followed by a trip to Kings Fork in Suffolk, their rival, and then they host Western Branch. Remember, Nansemond River didn't have a home field last year. They were installing the turf. Now they've got their home surface to get the job done, and I think they're going to be a team that gains a lot of momentum as we move into the teeth of September into later October, although the schedule is mighty challenging for them in that Southeastern district, sort of the SEC of high school football. I know Coach Ricks and some others in his district like to say. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of On the Hash with Hatfield. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, send us questions, post your comments. We want to hear from all of you out there as we do this on a regular basis. This should be a lot of fun as we move it along into October and the autumn time as the leagues begin to change. Again, thanks to everyone at Hometown Sports Productions and at the Virginia Beach Sportsplex. We bring you also on Saturday, 757 Saturday Sports Talk with Hatfield and Reflect, like a weekly field hockey show. Tell your friends, your neighbors, and even the ones that aren't your friends and your neighbors, your loved ones. And we hope you enjoy another exciting weekend of gridiron in action. And make sure you check out Atlantic Shores and Norfolk Christian at the Plex as well. We'll talk to you next time. Signing off on the Hash with Hatfield.